नमः सर्वेभ्यः। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात्कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्। सुधा टीकायाम् ऊकालोज्ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः इति सूत्रस्य अध्ययनं प्रचलतस्ति। पूर्वस्मिन् वर्गे यत्किमपि दृष्टं झटिति पुनरावर्तनं कुर्मः। तत्र ऊकालोज्ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः इत्यत्र त्रीणि पदानि ऊकालः, अच्, ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः। ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः इत्यत्र द्वन्द्वसमासः, ह्रस्वश्च दीर्घश्च प्लुतश्च समाहारद्वन्द्वः ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतम् इति भवेत्, परन्तु पुल्लिङ्गे शब्दः अस्ति, अतः सौत्रं पुंस्त्वम् इति तत्र व्याख्याने स्पष्टीक्रियते। ऊकालः इत्यत्र अपि समासः अस्ति। उत्तरपदलोपः अत्र द्रष्टव्यः इति भाष्ये उच्यते। सामान्यरूपेण उपमानपूर्वपदबहुव्रीहि समासः। गजस्य आननम् इव आननं यस्य सः, उष्ट्रस्य मुखम् इव मुखं यस्य सः, अनेनैव प्रकारेण उ इत्यस्य कालः इव कालः यस्य सः, अनेन प्रकारेण अयं समासः क्रियते। सः ऊकालः। तादृशः अच् क्रमेण ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतसंज्ञः स्यात्। ऊ इत्यत्रापि उश्च ऊश्च ऊश्च इति समासः अस्ति। तत्र केन क्रमेण एते वर्णाः भवेयुः इत्यस्मिन् विषये अपि अस्माभिः चिन्तनं कृतं। तत्र भाष्ये अपि अस्मिन् विषये महती चर्चा वर्तते। आदौ एकमात्रात्मकः उ इति, तदनन्तरं द्विमात्रात्मकः उ, तदनन्तरं त्रैमात्रिकः उ इति तत्र अन्ते स्पष्टीकरणं दत्तम् अस्ति। एतत् सर्वम् अपि दृष्ट्वा अन्ते अस्माभिः मात्रा इति शब्दस्य विषये किञ्चित् दृष्टम्। So matra is kind of approximate or random word. The exact time need not be fixed as long as both the parties agree to it. एकवारं एकमात्रा इति किम् इति स्पष्टीभवति चेत् double of that will be dvimatra and triple of that will be trimatra. So this particular point is important because specifically for the pronunciation of the hraswa and dirgha is actually different. We don't say is the dirgha, is hraswa, a is dirgha. So there is a difference between even the pronunciation. For eu is simply the elongation. The sound does not seem to be changed except for the elongation. For the elongated pronunciation of like doesn't make actually a, whereas a can also be pronounced as a short sound. So essentially this matra distinction, once we are clear with what is ekamatra and dvimatra, the sound should be pronounced for that one matra, a sound should be pronounced for that two matras. So tatra ardha matra, 1.5 matra, 2.3 matra एतद् भवितुमर्हति वा प्रायेण भवितुमर्हति, परन्तु अध्ययनार्थं त्रयः वर्गाः कृताः सन्ति, एकमात्रिक, द्विमात्रिक, त्रिमात्रिक। एतत् सर्वम् अस्माभिः दृष्टम्। अन्ते केषाञ्चन वर्णानां ह्रस्वभेदः नास्ति, केषाञ्चन वर्णानां दीर्घभेदः नास्ति. All that is completely artificial restrictions imposed because the language does not have these kind of letters, these kind of swaras, but other languages may have those kind of swaras. So there is no mathematics or there is no uchcharana shastra going on where we say a cannot be ekamatrika or lu cannot be dirgha and so on. एतत् सर्वम् अस्माभिः दृष्टम्। अद्य व्याख्यानं पश्यामः। तत्र लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुद्याम् ऊश्च 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 वः, तत्र बहुवचनं वः इति अस्ति। सो उः ऊ वः, सो वः इति अस्ति। वाम कालः इव कालः यस्य सः अच् क्रमात् ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः स्यात्, सः प्रत्येकम् उदात्तादिभेदेन त्रिधा. Saha pratyekam udattadibhedena tridha is basically a prelude for the next three sutras, uccairudattah, nichairanadattah, samaharah, swaritah. Parantu tasmat purvam idanim vyakhyanam pashyamah. Ukalah iti ह्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः इति समाहारद्वन्द्वः सौत्रम् पुंस्त्वम्. एक द्वि त्रिमात्रिक उकाराणाम् उच्चारणकालसदृशः उच्चारणकाल विशिष्टः अच. So see how they have formulated it. U ityasya kalah iva kalah. So two kalas are coming in the picture. U ityasya kalah iva kalah. That's the reason why he has two kalas in that statement. So first is uchcharana kala and tadrusha. So iva ityasya कृते सदृश इति शब्दः अस्ति, तादृश उच्चारण काल. So एक द्वि त्रिमात्रिक उकारः, तस्य उच्चारण कालः तादृश नो चेत् सदृशः उच्चारण कालः यस्य अचवर्णस्य अस्ति सः तादृश उच्चारण काल विशिष्टः अच क्रमशः ह्रस्व दीर्घ प्लुत सम्यकः भवति इति अर्थः. पुनरेकवारं वदामि. एक द्वि त्रिमात्रिकोकाराणाम् उच्चारण काल सदृशोच्चारण काल विशिष्टोच् क्रमशः ह्रस्व दीर्घ प्लुत सम्यको भवति इति सूत्रार्थः. So these kind of sutrarthas are something that we should try to remember, because this is the precise language that we are learning while studying this course. तत्र अग्रे किमुच्यते प्राथम्याद्. I think this point is already known to most of or all of you. प्राथम्याद् अकारोच्चारणमेव युक्तम् इति न शङ्क्यम्. केनचित् प्रायेण प्रश्नः क्रियते, ऊकालः इति किमर्थम्, अकालः इति किमर्थं न. क्रमेण गच्छामः. Why directly jump on u? So सामान्य रूपेण निसर्गे किं दृश्यते? We don't see the three variations of a or three variations of e very easily, but three variations of u can be very easily heard. कुक्कुटस्य ध्वनौ. कुक्कुटः यदा ध्वनिं करोति तदा, now these days in the cities I don't know where to find kukkuta, but in those days at least कुक्कुटः यदा ध्वनिं करोति तदा एकमात्रिकः ध्वनिः, द्विमात्रिकः ध्वनिः, त्रिमात्रिकः ध्वनिः इति पृथक् रूपेण तस्य अवगमनं सरलतया भवितुम् अर्हति स्म. अतः कुक्कुटोक्ते उकारे एक द्वि त्रिमात्रत्व प्रसिद्धेः akarasya anuktehe, this kind of variation is not seen for akara, so he takes the example from the nature akarasya anuktehe. तादृशमेव अ इ इत्येतेषाम् अन्येषां विषये अपि स्वीकर्तव्यम्. वाम कालः इव कालः यस्य, तत्र वाम इत्यत्र वः इति उ शब्दस्य प्रथमा बहुवचनं, वाम इति उ शब्दस्य षष्ठी बहुवचनं. वाम कालः इव कालः यस्य फलितार्थकथनम् इति यावत्. So u ityetesham kalah iva kalah yasya. Now these three next sentences are very beautiful because they are constructed in each in a different way. Observe this. So he defines the hrasva first, then he defines the dirgha, and then he defines the pluta. We know the definitions. Pay attention to the language. The language is very beautiful. एकमात्रात्मक ऊ सदृश उच्चारण कालिकः यः अच सः ह्रस्व सम्यकः भवति. कः अर्थः? एकमात्रात्मकः अच. कीदृशः अच? एकमात्रात्मकः अच. एकमात्रात्मकः ऊ सदृश उच्चारणकालिकः अच. अतः एकमात्रात्मकः कः? अच. कीदृशः अच? उ सदृश उच्चारणकालिकः. So he captures both things. It should be ekamatraatmaka and it should be similar to the sound of u. So ekamatraatmakah u सदृशः उच्चारणकालिकः यः अच सः ह्रस्व सम्यकः भवति. If you take this sentence, you can construct two more sentences. द्विमात्रात्मक ऊ सदृश उच्चारणकालिकः यः अच सः दीर्घ सम्यकः भवति. त्रिमात्रात्मक ऊ सदृश उच्चारणकालिका यः अच सः प्लुत सम्यकः भवति. So you can anyway construct three sentences. The next sentence for dirgha he constructs in a slightly different way. एवं द्विमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण सदृशः कालः यस्य अचः सः दीर्घ सम्यकः भवति. So he says here, he says यः अच सः ह्रस्व सम्यकः भवति. Next he says यस्य अचः सः दीर्घ सम्यकः भवति. Is the same information. I'm just trying to focus on the different style of writing the statement. In the first statement he clearly says yaha ach saha hrasva samyakah bhavati. In the second statement he says yasya achaha saha ach hrasva dirgha samyakah bhavati. द्विमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण काल सदृशः कालः यस्य अचः. Notice the difference. Earlier he says उच्चारण सदृश कालिकः अच. Because he says कालिकः, that is taken as a visheshana for acha, so he says yaha acha. Now he says kala sadrushah kalah yasya, so he says achaha सः दीर्घसंज्ञकः भवति. Using the same pattern, 3 more sentences or 2 more sentences can be constructed. एकमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण काल सदृशः कालः यस्य अचः सः ह्रस्वसंज्ञकः भवति, and त्रिमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण काल सदृशः कालः यस्य अचः सः प्लुतसंज्ञकः भवति. Then the third type of statement, again slightly different. Trimatratmaka ukara ucharana kala sadrishaha yaha ach. So now he combines the patterns from the first statement and the second statement to come to the third statement. Trimatratmaka ucharana kala sadrishaha yaha ach saha pluta samnyakaha bhavati. The same thing can be represented for hraswa and dirgha. एकमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण काल सदृशः यः अच सः ह्रस्व संज्ञकः भवति. द्विमात्रात्मक उकार उच्चारण काल सदृशः यः अच सः दीर्घ संज्ञकः भवति. So all that I'm trying to represent over here is that the same trivial piece of information has been written in 3 different ways. Each of these statements can be further modified for hrasva, dirgha and pluta. So a total of 9 different sentences for describing the same sutram can be constructed, or parts of the same sutram can be constructed. So what we have to learn is not the meaning of hrasva, dirgha, pluta, but this language. Try to learn this language, try to frame all your own sentences in this kind of language. This is the point to capture over here. सहा प्रत्येकम् इत्युक्ते ह्रस्व दीर्घः प्लुतः इति त्रयः भेदाः ये अस्माभिः दृष्टाः. अतः तत्र स्पष्टीक्रियते सः लब्धह्रस्वादिसंज्ञकः. लुक एट द लैंग्वेज. लब्धह्रस्वादिसंज्ञकः ह्रस्व दीर्घ प्लुत इत्यादयः संज्ञाः येन लब्धः सः लब्धह्रस्वादिसंज्ञकः इत्युक्ते ह्रस्वः दीर्घः प्लुतश्च अच प्रत्येकम् उदात्तादिभेदेन इत्युक्ते उदात्तत्वेन अनुदात्तत्वेन स्वरितत्वेन च धर्मविशेषेण त्रिधा इत्युक्ते त्रिभिः प्रकारैः वर्तते इति अर्थः. Any questions?
Just the last bit more there.
सः प्रत्येकम्. So सः प्रत्येकम् इत्युक्ते कः प्रत्येकम्? We are talking about ह्रस्व दीर्घ and pluta. So starting we have a swara that has been classified into hrasva, dirgha and pluta. Each of that will now be further divided into udatta, anudatta and swarita in the upcoming sutras. So saha ityukte hrasvaha ach, dirghaha ach, plutaha ach. अतः तत्र स्पष्टीक्रियते सः ह्रस्वः दीर्घः प्लुतः अच प्रत्येकम् उदात्तादिभेदेन इत्युक्ते उदात्तत्व इति भेदः, अनुदात्तत्वम् इति भेदः, स्वरितत्वम् इति भेदः, एतैः भेदैः त्रिधा इत्युक्ते त्रिभिः प्रकारैः, धा इति प्रत्ययः अस्ति, त्रिभिः प्रकारैः वर्तते इत्युक्ते ह्रस्वस्वरस्य त्रयः प्रभेदाः, दीर्घस्वरस्य त्रयः प्रभेदाः, प्लुतस्वरस्य त्रयः प्रभेदाः. So then you will have udatta hrasva, udatta dirgha, udatta pluta, and in the same way
basically a 3x3, he's made a 3x3 matrix right now.
He's made a 3x3 matrix, and then he'll add another layer to it later on, anunasika versus niranunasika. So that will be total of 18. अतः अग्रे विद्यमानानि त्रीणि सूत्राणि उच्चैः उदात्तः, नीचैः अनुदात्तः, समाहारः स्वरितः. त्रीणि अपि सूत्राणि युगपत् एव अस्माभिः पठितुं शक्यन्ते. उच्चैः उदात्तः, नीचैः अनुदात्तः, समाहारः स्वरितः. Who is the videya in all these three sutras?
उदात्तः अनुदात्तः
स्वरितः. उदात्तः अनुदात्तः स्वरितः. Who is the uddeshya?
उच्चैः नीचैः.
अच् वर्णः.
Sorry.
Ach is the uddeshya. So ach varnah udatta कीदृशः अच उच्चैः अच उदात्तः, कीदृशः अच नीचैः अच अनुदात्तः, समाहारः अच स्वरितः. At the onset of entering these commentaries, let me tell you the three most useless sutras of Ashtadhyayi: Uchchairudattah, Nichairunudattah, Samahara Swaritha. If I am given one chance to remove something from Ashtadhyayi, it will be these three sutras. Absolutely misdirecting, and no explanation for this sutra makes any sense. Uchchaihi does not mean loudly. Nichaihi does not mean in your mouth or aspashta rupena and so on. And that is exactly what Sudha Teeka also immediately discusses. नाद धर्म विशेषः उच्चैस्त्वं तु इह न विवक्षितम् उपांशु उच्चार्यमाणे अव्याप्तेः. उपांशु इत्युक्ते किम्? Within the lips. If somebody speaks, I can say namaste, I can say namaste. You can say speak the same thing loudly or within just by making a minor movement of the lips. Okay, that is upamshu. This kind of pronunciation is not anudatta. Namaste, this is not udatta. So uchchaihi has nothing to do with the loudness of the noise. You can shout and still it can be anudatta, and you can speak very softly and still it might be udatta. So nada dharma visheshaha uchchaistvam tu na iha vivakshitam upamshu uchcharyamane avyapte. Avyapti. What is avyapti? Anybody? When a certain rule,
Not spread.
yes, is not so sufficiently descriptive enough and therefore it leaves out certain aspects of a set, then we say avyapti. That rule does not completely cover the entire set. That is called avyapti. The opposite of that is ativyapti. If a rule is broad enough so that it includes unnecessary members in the set, then it is ativyapti. So for example, if I say all four-legged animals are cows, then that is ativyapti, because horses and other dogs will also come over there. On the other hand, if I give an even more description, all animals with four legs and horns and those who give milk are cows, then that will probably be a little bit less description, because at some point in the age cows do not give milk. So giving milk is an avyapti of describing a cow. Having four legs is an ativyapti of describing a cow. So you need a precise description. If you just say uchchai is loudness, then the softly spoken entity will no more be called udatta. So that is avyapti. So upamshu uchcharyamane avyapte. So this is the fundamental reason why people really doubt on why the words uchchaihi, nichaihi and samahara have ever been used by Panini in these sutras. They absolutely do not make any sense. So that's what he's explaining further. Uchchaihi iti shabdaha adhikarana shakti pradhanaha urdhva bhage iti arthe vartate. कः अर्थः इति चेत् उच्चैः इति शब्देन लाउडनेस इत्यस्य निर्देशः न भवति, अपितु स्थानस्य निर्देशः भवति. अधिकरण typically used as a synonym for sthana. So sthana shakti pradhanah ityukte a part of sthana or the place where the uchcharana happens, that is being described over here. Let's go to this sutram, and Bhashyakara explains this all the way towards the end. He says, Samane prakrame iti vaktavyam. Prakrama is sthana. Each letter has a certain uchcharana sthana, kantha, talu, murdha, danta, whatever. Samane prakrame. So you take the sthana and hypothetically divide it into two equal parts. That's what samane prakrame means. So he says samane prakrame, and then he says kaha punaha prakramaha, uraha, kantaha, shiraha. So whatever is the organ which is being used for pronunciation, you divide it into two parts. You call one or the upper part as uchchaihi, you call the lower part as nichaihi. So simply dividing the organ into two hypothetical parts, when the sound comes from one part, you call it uchchaihi. When the sound comes from another part, you call it nichaihi. When the sound comes from both the parts, you call it samahara, and then give three terms, udatta, anudatta, and swarita. This is one way of describing it as given over here by the Bhashyakara. The same thing has been discussed in the Sudha Teeka over here. Uchchaihi shabdaha अधिकरण शक्ति प्रधानः ऊर्ध्व भागे वर्तते तालवादीनां सावयवत्व कथनम. Nobody has dissected and actually did a physical marking where this part is uchchaihi and this part is nichaihi. So savayavatva kathanam, we assume that they are made of two parts. That's what he explains later on. Tesham akhandatve, there is no physical separation between the two parts of these organs. They are akhanda. So tesham akhandatve ऊर्ध्वभागे इत्यस्य कः अर्थः? When you say urdhva and adho there should be some separator that separates the urdhva from the adha. So how can you say urdhva if there is no separator? So urdhva iti anupapattehe savayavatva kathanam. You assume that there are two parts. There is an upper part and there is a lower part, and then you associate upper part with uchchaihi. The same thing is being explained as samane prakrame iti vaktavyam. Have an organ consisting of two parts, one part for udatta swara, one part for anudatta swara. Now this is all completely hypothetical. I don't know if there was a real research on anything to see if the sound is really passing through those things. Bhashyakara also doesn't seem to agree to this 100%. Bhashyakara has given a different definition of the same thing. So he says, Evam tarhi lakshanam karishyate. Let's define it in a different way. Ayamo darunyam anuta khasya iti uchchaih karani shabdasya. कः भाष्यकारेण विषयः अत्र स्पष्टीक्रियते? He says there are certain parameters that we can measure. गात्राणां निग्रहः. The organs are being tightly used or they are being kept a little loose. So गात्राणां निग्रहः. Swarasya rukshata. Is there a hardness in the sound or is there a softness in the sound? कंठस्य संवृत्तता. ख is indriya. खस्य इत्युक्ते इन्द्रियस्य संवृत्तता. How open is that organ for passage of air, whereas how close is that organ for the hindrance of the air. So instead of randomly imagining two parts like the upper part and lower part, let's define udatta anudatta swarita or uchchaihi nichaihi samahara in a slightly different way, by dealing with the actual sound, how tight or the loose organs are while the sound is made, how hard or soft the voice is, how open or closed are the organs. Now again, this is very vague, but this at least goes somewhat close to the concept of pitch in the language. When you have sare, gama and so on, each of them has a different frequency. Each different frequency results from different type of hardness and softness of the sound, different type of openness of the organs, whether the organs are held tightly or loosely. These different criteria help us, or these different criteria enable different frequencies of the sound to come out. Therefore the pitch of the sound, which is basically sa, re, ga and so on, these can be somehow mapped. We have not yet given a precise definition, but these can be somehow mapped to udatta, anudatta and swarita using this kind of definition, ayamaha, darunyam and anuta. So let's see this. So he says ayamaha, darunyam and anuta. Three components are being discussed. Ayama is gatranam nigraha, tight or loose organs. Darunyam is rukshata, hardness or softness. Anuta is samvrutata, how open or closed the organs. So two different definitions provided by Bhashyakara. Sudha Teeka uses only one. Kaumudi also uses only one. So talvadishu sabhageshu sthaneshu. Imagine two parts of the organ. Upper part, if the sound comes from that, is uchchaihi. Lower part, if the sound comes from that, nichaihi. But this second definition goes somewhat close to what I am going to talk a little later.
But all that samvrita, vivrita are already defined as a bahya prayatna, right, Mahoday? The sthana and the bahya prayatna is different. It does not concern with anudatta, swarita and all, right? Like,
so udatta, anudatta and swarita are the bahya prayatnas of the swara, isn't it?
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same thing that you are going to learn or you would have learned that time, right? So actually now it falls everything together. When you learn bahya prayatnas, yeah.
They said if you, for example, take the talu and you were to hypothetically divide it into two parts. Now talu, kantha, murdha, it makes sense. Oshthavarna and dantavarna, you can't say that, no?
Yeah, that is correct. So it's all hypothetical. I don't know why this has been written, and there has been no elaborate explanation on
You
this
can't even
particular
speak with
aspect.
the upper part
Correct.
of the oshta
Correct.
alone or
So
upper part of the danta alone.
correct.
Speech itself
So
is
the
not
way this to
possible.
be understood is that, see, Oshtha is only one component of pronunciation. The air generates all the way from the Nabhi. It comes out throughout the air passage, throughout the passage, and then comes out. So through the entire passage, it's quite possible that most of the organs can be divided into two parts. That's the reason he says, he gives an example like Uraha and Shiraha. Ura, the chest, and Shira, the head, are not direct organs of pronunciation anywhere, but they are assisting in the pronunciation. Unless Uras, unless the chest involves the passage of the air, it's not possible to speak. So it's not just the end organ of pronunciation like Oshtha, but it is all the sets of organs that occur across the passage. Most of them might be divisible into two parts.
But yeah, the Anudatta Swarita and all, it never comes into the Abhyanta Prayatna or whatever. It's only the Bahya Prayatna.
It's only the Bahya Prayatnas.
So we don't talk about whether it's a Oshta, Kantha, or Talavya,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
It's either
Correct.
a Maha, yeah. Yeah,
Correct.
either Samvrita, Vivrita, or Mahaprana. Like
Correct. Correct.
Then
Okay.
he shouldn't have used Talu itself as an example.
Who? Panini never uses Talu as an example.
No, in this thing Sudha Teeka.
No, in Siddhanta Kaumudi he says Talvadishu Sabhagishu. So he says Talu and other organs which can be divided into two parts. So see, basically, whether Uchcharana Sthana Talu is directly related to Abhyantara Prayatna or Bahya Prayatna is a different thing. All that he's saying is air passes through that particular organ. Whether that organ is used or not in the particular definitions is the secondary question. Air passes through that particular passage or that particular organ, and the organ has been divided into two parts. Is all that he's trying to clarify over here. See, this is extremely, hypothetical and is hard to understand and accept. So give me some time. I'll come to a little bit of different explanation, which is more dependent on the Ayama, Darunyam, and Anuta, which is the second criteria that I mentioned right now, and which actually maps to what your Brahya Prayatnas that you have studied. You studied the Bahya Prayatnas, Vivara, Shvasa, Gosha, Samvarana, the Gosha for the Vyanjanas, and Alpaprana, Mahaprana again for the Vyanjanas, and Udatta Anudatta Swarita for the Swaras, and that exactly maps over here. That Bahya Prayatna refers to openness and closeness, Vivrutatva and Samvrutatva, or the hardness and softness, or the Ayamaha, tight and loose organs, and so on. So in this context, I want you to see this article, a monograph on the Swaras of the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda. A very beautiful two-page write-up. In this write-up, he explains how the Taittiriya Krishna Yajurveda branch defines the Udatta Swara, the Anudatta Swara, the Swarita Swara. So he says, let's read this article together. It's actually very simple, very easy to understand. So in the Taittiriya Shakha of the Krishna Yajurveda, there are basically four basic swaras, is what he says. The Udatta, Anudatta, and the Swarita are known by all. The fourth one is the Prachaya, which is mostly forgotten. We will consider all the four swaras over here. So he says Udatta Swara ityukte kim. The Udatta Swara is equivalent to a pitch of the Gandhara Swara. So when you have Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni, the Ga frequency must map to Udatta. Now this is a precise scientific definition that does not bring Uchchaihi and Nichaihi in the picture. So this is what he says. The Udatta is what? The Ga Swara is called Udatta. It is a strong Swara and it will generally retain its existence even after sandhis with other swaras. So sometimes what happens, most of the swara sandhis, there is one swara which can be Udatta Anudatta Swarita, and there can be another swara which is Udatta Anudatta Swarita. And when a sandhi happens, only one swara remains. So the question is, what will it be? Will it inherit this Udattatva of the previous swara or Udattatva of the next swara? Now these rules nobody studies while studying the Sandhi Prakaranam. We should really study these rules while studying the Sandhi Prakaranam, but we keep it away for the Swara Prakaranam. So he says Udatta is in general a strong Swara. Mostly it will remain after the Sandhis is done. This is anyway not an important part. The important part is just examples and the fact that it is a Gandhara Swara. The second is the Anudatta Swara. The Anudatta is equal to the Rishabha. So Sa, Re, that Re is Anudatta. Everybody knows Saregama, or I'm talking in air? Yeah, okay, fine. So re is anudatta. So he says sa re ga. So that ga is udatta and re is anudatta. Now, exactly when you understand this, those of you who understand who have the hearing abilities to distinguish between re and ga can also pronounce an udatta swara and anudatta swara separately very precisely after looking at this definition, which is not possible if you just read Uchchaihi Udattaha, Nichaihi Anudattaha, and Samaharaha Swaritaha. So the Anudatta is equal to the Rishabha. It is a weak swara. Weak in the sense it is easy to get manipulated, it is easy to get converted to something else. And there is a very beautiful sutra in Ashtadhyayi for this. It is converted to Swarita when it follows an Udatta. So in the Swara Prakaranam, ever if you study the Swara Prakaranam, if you see a configuration Udatta and Anudatta in the sequence, then all the way at the end of Ashtadhyayi, the Anudatta Swara gets converted to Swarita. So 8466, Udattat Anudattasya Swaritaha. Very beautiful sutra, only three words, Udatta Anudatta Swarita. All three words are used in the same sutra. So udattat anudattasya swaritaha. If you see a configuration where there is an udatta swara and immediately after that there is anudatta swara, then anudatta will get converted to swarita. So udattat anudattasya swaritaha. Anudattasya swaritaha bhavati. कीदृशः अनुदात्तः उदात्तात् अनन्तरं विद्यमानः अनुदात्तः. Now, this sutram occurs all the way at the end of Ashtadhyayi, which means it is asiddha towards entire Ashtadhyayi. And so, when you change this, all that you have to do is pronounce. Don't make any further changes. So, at the end, when all the word is generated, and just when you are about to pronounce it, look at whether you are pronouncing an anudatta just after the udatta. And if that is happening, instead of anudatta, pronounce it as swarita. And what is anudatta? You are going to pronounce it in the same frequency as re, change it to a different frequency of swarita that we will learn right now. Understood? So now this all makes complete sense. All these sutras start making complete sense when we learn this new definition of udatta, anudatta, and swarita with some mapping. It might be a different mapping for Yajurveda, different mapping of Rigveda, whatever. More important is that we have a mapping over here. Some swara in the Sangeeta, in the music that we all are aware of. And why we are aware of it? Because they have frequencies. So, for example, Sa has a particular frequency, Re has a particular frequency, Ga has a particular frequency in a certain scale. So now we can immediately say the Re of that corresponds to Anudatta and the G of that corresponds to Udatta. So Uchchaihi does not mean loudly, Nichaihi does not mean swift or softly, is basically difference of frequencies. Uchchaihi is higher frequency, Nichaihi is lower frequency, but again that breaks down when you go to the Swarita, because see, Re and G, the two adjacent swaras, are being given as Anudatta and Udatta. So Swarita lies even beyond the Udatta. So Swarita is even the higher. So he should be Uchchaistara or something, but he says Samahara. So all those sutra business is anyway screwed. But let's say Swarita. The Swarita is equal to the Panchama. Sa, Re, Ga. Ma is temporary on hold. You go to Pa. Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa. That Pa is Swarita. Sudha, do you have a question?
No, no, I'm just trying to say it.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay.
Re ga ma pa sa
That I
pa.
don't know.
That is very good.
So
Sa
that is why,
re
in the sense, in that particular frequency, you should speak. For example, when you see Gananam Tvam Ganapatim Havamahe and you see the Swarita Swaras over there, remember, try speaking
Panchama.
it next time in Panchama, the corresponding Swara, and it's extremely hard. Like now you see Gananam Tvam, and it's a mix of Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita. Those of you who understand the tones, or those of you who can sing at least a little bit, try to sing that Gananam Tvam Ganapati Gum by appropriate Re, Ga, and Pa. Only three swaras you need: Re, Ga, and Pa in the
Re
proper
ga
fashion
pa.
with those marks. Okay. Udatta is written without any additional lines. Anudatta is written as an underline. Swarita is written as a vertical line. So look at this. This is Anudatta. Akara is Anudatta in Vayavaha. Ya, the akara over there is Udatta, and Vaha, the over there is Swarita. A vertical line has been used. So the Swarita is equal to the Panchama. So Re, Ga, and Pa. And then it is of two types, Sandhija and Jatya. We don't need to go in the further details. I'll share the article with you. You can read on your own. The missing swara, so you have re, ga, the ma was missing, that is called prachaya. So there is a fourth swara, it's called prachaya, and that is the madhyama swara. So the prachaya should be equal to the madhyama swara, but in practice, it is not pronounced much different from udatta. So udatta is ga. Mostly people pronounce it very similarly, but theoretically, it should be the middle missing swara. Re is anudatta, G is udatta, Ma should be prachaya, and Pa should be swarita. Now everything falls perfectly in place, and this will hopefully give you much better understanding of udatta, anudatta, and swarita that you have ever gained. So this prachaya needs to be represented as madhyama, but it gets pronounced as udatta, which causes the further errors. Now, Sudhaji, do you want to try this? Samani va akuti samana hrudayani vaha. So this is, let's at least read this. Anudatta and anudatta. So that's re and re. Ni is udatta, so that's g. Va is anudatta. A is g. Ku is pa. This is swarita. So pa swara. Ti is udatta. Aneneva prakarana everywhere else. If it is underlined, it will be anudatta, which is re. If it is no marking, it is udatta, which is ga. If it is a vertical line, it is swarita, it is pa. So if you see in the sequence, the pa is actually the highest frequency. But you call it samahara. I have no clue why you call it samahara. That's why I said it's mainly because the organs somehow have been like defined in that sense, that the air passes through both the parts of the organ and so on. So anena prakarena atra udattah anudattah tatha swaritah इति तेषां सर्वेषां व्याख्या दत्ता अस्ति.
The Rishabham, Gandharam, and all, they got two variations at least, if not three in the music. In the Veena, there will be two places for Re, two places for Ga, but the other one is overlapping.
So then
So,
one of them you say Shuddha and other you say Komala or Tivra. So Komala and Tivra has to be
yeah,
ignored and only the Shuddha one has to be considered in this context. I have seen some different definitions of these also. So for example, Ni, Sa and Re. So instead of having Re, G and Pa, somebody told me Ni, Sa and Re. So the Ni of the lower octave, Sa and Re are respectively Anudatta, Udatta and Swarita. But I mean, these are hear and say things. I have not seen any documentation. This document was given to me by Soumya ji. I think she knows this person. So authenticity is guaranteed. There is no question about the authenticity. I have not pulled up a random article on the internet and given. So this is a very useful document. It's just two pages document. It just shows the 4 different type of swaras and explains each of them. Great. Gachamaha. So let's read the commentaries, the 3 most useless commentaries. Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, this is, I mean, whatever I taught right now has no sense in whatever is written over here. So they should be like, these 3 sutras should be thoroughly changed. Rather, they should be removed. You don't need the definition of Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita in the Vyakarana Shastra. You can just like Sankhya, for example, Eka, Dvi, Tri, these are Sankhyas and we don't define them. So in the same way, Udatta, Anudatta, Swarita, there is no need to give inaccurate definitions like this. Or at least I would say the intentions of Panini Maharshi when he wrote these sutras are completely lost. What he meant at that time while writing Uchchair Udatta, Nichair Anudatta, that particular thing is completely lost these days. व्याख्यानं पश्यामः. उच्चैरुदात्तः उच्चैरुदात्तः इति नादधर्मविशेषः उच्चैस्त्वं तु इह न विवक्षितम् उपांशु उच्चार्यमाणे अव्याप्तेः किन्तु उच्चैः शब्दः अधिकरण शक्ति प्रधानः स्थान निर्देशं करोति ऊर्ध्वभागस्य निर्देशं करोति इति आशयः। अधिकरण शक्ति प्रधानः ऊर्ध्वभागे वर्तते, उकालो झ्रस्वदीर्घप्लुतः इत्यतः अच् इत्यनुवर्तते, तद् एतद् आह तालवादिषु इत्यादिना। So that ach, which is the uddesha, comes from these three sutras. Sabhageshu iti तालवादीनां सावयवत्व कथनम ऊर्ध्वभागे इत्यस्य उपपादनार्थम तेषाम अखंडत्वे. Nobody has physically taken a string and divided them into two parts. ऊर्ध्वभागे इति अनुपपत्तेः. So what does it mean to have ऊर्ध्वभाग and अधोभाग? It has to be imagined. So सावयवत्व कथनम, you imagine that they are basically two different parts. So the parts have been imagined. सावयवत्व कथनम कृतम अस्ति. अनेनेव प्रकारेण नीचैरुदात्तः नीचैः इति शब्दः अधिकरण शक्ति प्रधानः indicates the place, the lower part. अधोभागे वर्तते, अतः नीचैः इति. समाहारः स्वरितः पूर्वसूत्राभ्याम् उदात्त अनुदात्त पदे अनुवृत्ते व्याख्यानात् धर्म प्रधाने षष्ठ्यन्ततया च विपरिणम्येते. तो समाहारः स्वरितः इत्यत्र उदात्तस्य अनुदात्तस्य च समाहारः. Samahara is equality. Kasya equality? The equality of whatever you call udatta, I have already defined, and whatever we have called anudatta, tasya samahara. So shashtya viparinamyate. So purva sutrabhyam udatta anudatta pade anuvrutte. Take the anuvrutti of udatta, and these are the sutras in the same sequence, right? Uchcherudatta, nicherudatta, samahara, swaritaha. So take the udatta and anudatta as anuvrutti from the previous sutra. व्याख्याना धर्म प्रधाने. उदात्त इत्युक्ते उदात्त संज्ञान, उदात्त धर्मः, अनुदात्त धर्मः. So we are not dividing the samnyas, we are dividing the dharma behind them. So udattatva, anudattatva. See how clearly and finely he has thought. Even if you bring the word udatta, it is not a samnya that is brought in, it is the dharma that is brought in. So पूर्व सूत्राभ्याम उदात्त अनुदात्त पदे अनुवृत्ते व्याख्यान धर्म प्रधाने एते पदे षष्ठ्यन्ततया च विपरिणम्येते यस्मिन् समाहरणं सा समाहारः घञ् प्रत्ययः अस्ति. हृ धातोः अधिकरणे घञ् प्रत्ययः. समाहारः अस्मिन् स्थले भवति, यस्मिन् स्थले भवति, अधिकरणे घञ् प्रत्ययः. अतः उदात्त अनुदात्त तत्वयोः धर्मयोः अस्मिन् स्थले इत्युक्ते अस्मिन् स्वरे मेलनं भवति. A swara which is generated by the combination of udattattva, the dharma, and the anudattattva, dharma, means what? You use both parts of the organ to pronounce it. So use the upper part also and lower part also. So udattattva anudattva dharmayoho asmin achimelanam saha ach swarita samnyakah bhavati. Now this is again extremely difficult to understand because 5 minutes ago we saw the definition. The swarita is actually pa. Now how can re and ga come together? I don't know whether re and ga will come together to form a pa or not. I don't know. I have not studied that mathematics, but it sounds very weird. Like re and ga coming together and having a middle point, and that will be called pa. Or maybe it's just an addition. Maybe re is 2 and ga is 3, so 2 plus 3 is 5, which is the panchama. I don't know how they do it, but it turns out. So udatta plus anudatta happens to be swarita is the whole meaning of this particular statement. You get what I'm saying? So tadetat phalitattvamaha udatta anudattatve iti. So udatta and anudatta, the dharmas have been combined together. Now how these dharmas get combined together? There is yet another sutra in Ashtadhyayi which you have not studied, but it is immediately after samahara swaritaha. So uchchairudattaha nichairudattaha samahara swaritaha tasyadita udattam ardharaswam. So he says in the samahara, the initial half part is udatta and the later half part is anudatta, not the reverse. It's not anudatta and then udatta. The initial part is udatta and then anudatta. Tasya aditam udattam ardharaswam. Samahara swaritaha, and this is tasya adita udattam ardharaswam. So swarita swarasya prarambhikaha ardhabhagaha udattaha. So when swarita swara is pronounced, initial half portion the air comes from the upper passage, later half portion air comes from the lower passage. This is all hilarious, but this is how it has been defined. Now, the more complex thing over here is this Ardha Bhaga. What is exactly Ardha Bhaga? Is it 50% of the time? There is a debate amongst the Vaiyakaranas. Kashikakara defines it in a different way. Kaumudi defines it in a different way. So I have given both the pakshas. The Kashikakarasya paksha is slightly different. The Kaumudikarasya paksha is slightly different. So you go through this more and more complex stuff if you want ever. I don't want to go venture into these kind of details because this is all really useless, has no value in it. So, but somehow they have defined the sama Swarita Swara in this particular way. Essentially, the Swarita Swara is a combination of Udatta and Anudatta. I think that is being explained in the Sudha Teeka over here. Udattatva Anudattvatvayoho Dharmayoho Yasmin Achimelanam Saha Ach Swarita Samyakaha Ityarthaha. Okay, Sadagopanji, you had something to contribute.
Probably the what is this? The Udatta and the Swarita combination, whatever 1/4 or 1/2 or whatever, that combination should not be equated to Ga and Re combination. Ga and Re combination can never produce, I mean, in our ordinary common sense kind of thing, it will never produce the uh,
Correct. Perfect.
Panchama.
Correct,
So,
correct, 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 correct.
you are trying to go only with the sthana. When you want to talk about the upper part of Talu, I don't know where it is, and the lower part of the Talu at the same time, or immediately one after another, then probably you are unknowingly increasing the frequency and it is becoming Panchama.
Possible, but is some research should be done, and I don't know if any research has been done on this point. But that's a very good point. This is quite possible how to generate pancham out of it. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, sir. Somebody who has done music theory might probably be able to help. We can check out.
Probably yes. Yeah. I mean, if
Check
you
this
know
because
anybody
music,
like you,
there are numbers associated. That much I know. You can check it out.
yeah, sure. Tada etat phalitamaha udatta anudattvatve iti. So that's in Siddhanta Kaumudi. It's not in Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. So this one udatta anudattatve varna dharmau samariyete yasmin saha ach swarita samnyasyat. That is being explained over here. Saha navavidhapi. So further, third level of classification. Saha navavidhapi pratyekam anunasikatva ananunasikatvabhyam vidha. So each of these 9 gets further divided into whether you use the nasika or whether you don't use the nasika while pronouncing that swara. So saha navavidhaha api ityukte udatta anudatta swarita multiplied by hasva dirgha pluta. So that gives 9 swaras. Each of them dvidha, you can pronounce it using the nasika or you can pronounce it without using the nasika. So udattarhasva, anudattarhasva, swaritarhasva, each of them is nasika or niranunasika or ananunasika. Udatta dirgha, anudatta dirgha, swarita dirgha, again each of them without or with nasika. Udatta pluta, anudatta pluta, swarita pluta. Iti ritya yaha ekaikaha acha. He actually lists down all the 9. सः नवविधः स्थितः सः प्रत्येकम् अनुनासिकत्वेन अननुनासिकत्वेन च द्विधा इत्युक्ते द्वाभ्यां प्रकाराभ्यां वर्तते इत्यर्थः. अग्रिमं सूत्रं मुखनासिकावचनोनुनासिकः मुखसहितनासिकया उच्चार्यमाणः वर्णः अनुनासिकसंज्ञः स्यात्. So mukha will always be used plus the nasika is used. So mukha sahita nasika, this is mukha nasika. So mukha sahita nasika, mukha nasika, this is called madhyama padalopi samasa. We have Shaka Parthiva is a typical example. Shaka Priyaha Parthivaha, Shaka Parthivaha. These are the standard examples given in all the Samasa books. Parna Nirmita Kuti, Parna Kuti. Tila Mishritam Udakam, Tilodakam. Sinhopalakshitam Asanam, Sinhasanam. So some of the examples you can memorize and that will be very useful. So the middle part is removed. Actually, this is called Uttarapada Lopi because the Uttarapada of the Purvapada is being removed. So Tila Mishrita Udaka. So that Mishrita is the Uttarapada of the Purvapada. Tila is the Purvapada of the Purvapada, Mishrita is the Uttarapada of the Purvapada, and Udaka is the Uttarapada. So Tila Mishrita Udaka ityatra Mishrita iti shabdasya lopaha bhavati. In Vyakhyanas they usually call it Uttarapada lopi. So that's why they have this Vartika. Shaka Parthivadinam Siddhaye Uttarapada lopasya upasankhyanam tenane vishishtenane ityatra Shaka Parthivadinam Siddhaye Uttarapada lopasya upasankhyanam. So Uttarapada lopa Shaka Priyaha Parthivaha ityatra Priya iti Uttarapadam kasya Shaka Priya ityasya. So Shakaha Priyaha yasya saha. There the Uttarapada is Priya, that gets removed in the bigger samasa. So Shaka Priyaha Parthivaha Shaka Parthivaha Deva Priyaha Brahmanaha Deva Brahmanaha iti bhavitum arhati. अतः शाकपार्थिवादीनां सिद्धे उत्तरपदलोपस्य उपसंख्यानम् अनेनैव वार्तिकेन अत्र मुखद्वितीया नासिका, द्वितीया इत्युक्ते सहिता और मुखसहिता नासिका उभयथा भवितुम् अर्हति. सो मुखसहिता नासिका, मुखद्वितीया नासिका, मुखनासिका इति शाकपार्थिवादित्वात् उत्तरपदलोपः. तस्मात् पूर्वम् I forgot मुखनासिका वचनोनुनासिका इत्यत्र विधेयं किम्? अनुनासिकः इति विधेयम्. मुखनासिका वचनः is the विशेषण of acha. कीदृशः अच? मुखनासिका वचनः. Mukha and nasika, it's pronounced using both of them. So vachana is lyuta pratyaya. Bru dhatoho lyuta pratyaya, lekhanah, hasana, kridana and so on. So bru dhatoho lyuta pratyaya vachana iti shabdah, parantu atra karmani lyuta asti. Gamanam, hasanam, pathanam, this is all action. That's bhave lyuta. Atra vachanaha karmani lyuta asti. Achvarna is the entity that is being spoken, that is vachana. So uchyate iti vachanaha. Krutyalyuto bahulam iti sutram. Krutyalyuto bahulam iti sutram. Krutyalyuto bahulam lyut pratyayah bahulam arthe bhavati ityukte kutrachit anyatra api bhavitum arhanti. So he says karnadhikaranayoho bhavecha lyuta. So lyuta pratyaya is generally given in the bhave like pathanam or karane, likhyate anaya iti lekhani. So karana, and similarly adhikarana. So lyut pratyay is given in bhave, karana and adhikarana, but now it is being used in the karmani sense. So uchyate asau, the entity that is being spoken is the vachana. So there we say कृत्यल्युटो bahulam ityenena karmani lyut pratyaya bhavati. Uchyate asau, the thing that is spoken, that is vachana, tatra karmani lyut iti pratyaya asti. Sumanji.
Now, I wanted a little more clarification on lyut being bhave, karmani, karana, adhikarana, all of those. So, can you please clarify that a little bit?
Right. So each krut pratyaya is used in a certain sense. If I apply senvula pratyaya on the pacha verb, we get pachaka. Now, what is the relationship of pachaka with the pacha dhatu? It indicates the karta of the pacha dhatu. It doesn't indicate the karma or the karana. The
Yeah.
word pachaka can be used in any sentence. Pachakena pachyate. That karmani prayoga is different. But the
Correct.
word pachaka is used to indicate the karta. Is it clear?
Yaha pachati saha pachakah.
Correct. Yaha pachati saha pachakaha. So there pachaka will essentially be the karta of that kriya. Clear? So the actual vibhakti of the pachaka does not matter. The derivation of the pachaka is yaha pachati saha pachakaha. In the same way, how are the lyut pratyanta words formed? They are formed in the bhave sense. So lekhanam is the lekhana kriya. Likhyate ityeva lekhanam. So likhati, you can rewrite this statement as lekhanam karoti. So lekhanam is the action being done. So instead of saying the kid is writing, you say the kid is doing the action of writing. That's the difference. Likhati versus lekhanam karoti. This is the bhave usage of lyut. Other than that, the lyut pratyaya can also be used in the karane sense and in the adhikarane sense. So karanadhikaranayoshcha iti sutram asti. करणे अधिकरणे च कारके ल्युट् इति प्रत्ययः भवति. So the lut pratyay can also be used to indicate the instrument, the karana, or the place, the adhikarana. Simple example, lekhani. Lekhani is a lut pratyaya. It is not the action of writing. It is not the person who is writing. It is the instrument of writing. Likhyate anaya iti lekhani. The corresponding example, a very simple example for the adhikarana is bhavanam. भू धातोः ल्युट् प्रत्यये कृते भवनम इति शब्दः गृहम् इत्यस्मिन् अर्थे स्वीक्रियते. भवति अस्मिन् इति भवनम. You stay in that. So Devadattah bhavati asmin iti bhavanam. Other examples are also given in the commentaries. Godohani, the vessel which is used for milking. So the milk is there in that vessel. So godohani duhyate asyam iti godohani. Anena prakarena lut pratyaya keshu च स्थलेषु करणे केषु च स्थलेषु अधिकरणे प्रायेण सर्वत्र भावे भवितुमर्हति. परन्तु कुत्रचित् अन्येषु अपि स्थलेषु यथा अस्माभिः यत्र दृष्टं ल्युट् प्रत्ययः अत्र कर्मणि प्रयुक्तः अस्ति. तदर्थं किं सूत्रमिति चेत् कृत्यल्युटो बहुलं. बहुलं मीन्स् यथा शिष्टैः अनुमन्यते तथा कर्तुं शक्यते. सो कृत्यल्युटो बहुलं क्वचित् भवति क्वचित् न भवति इति आशयः.
महोदय लिख्यते अनया इत्यत्र तु कर्ता एव किल तत्.
सो लिख्यते अनया इत्युक्ते बालिकया इति न. अनया इत्युक्ते अस्याः साहाय्येन. So I understand your confusion. So let's change the statement to karma kartari prayoga. Likhati anaya. Likhati anaya iti lekhani. Okay, Devadattah anaya likhati, sa lekhani.
So I didn't realize that lekhani was also lut pratyay.
See, it's there, na, lekhana plus neep lekhani. The very purpose of having a t in luta is to have a neep. Otherwise, there is no point of having a t. Anytime you see an itsamne ka t in a pratyaya, it is for having a neep. Lekhani.
Astu.
Need not be napumsakalingam always.
Who need not be napumsakalingam?
Lekani, lut need not be napumsakalingam.
No, I guess in the bhave it is, right?
Correct. Bhave lut is always in the napumsakalinga, but not necessarily. I mean, adhikarane also you see napumsakalinga. Bhavanam is napumsakalinga. Vahanam. Okay, so it is in the napumsakalinga. So for the karana and adhikarana, it depends on the gender of the object, or it depends on how it is used in the language. Bhave, it is always napumsakalinga.
And here in the karmani,
Again, karmani also whichever. Here it is pullinga, right? Vachanaha. Uchchate asau iti vachanaha. So it is pullinga. So linga is only defined for bhave, which should be napumsakalinga. Napumsake bhavektaha lyucha. Here's a sutra over there. Napumsake bhavektaha 33114. Napumsake bhavektaha. So kta pratyaya should be used in the napumsaka and bhava, and immediately next sutra lyutcha. So lyut pratyaya should be used in napumsaka and bhava. So the sutra that gives the lyut pratyaya for bhava gives it in the napumsakalinga. So we say napumsake bhave lyut. A similar linga is not given for karmani or karana or adhikarana or anything else. Any further questions?
तत्र उच्चैः तद् अव्ययं वा महोदय अथवा तृतीया एव? अव्ययमेव
इति सकारान्तम् अव्ययम्. कुत्र उच्चैरुदात्तः इत्यत्र?
आमाम्, उच्चैः उदात्तः नीचैः अनुदातः, बोत् आर् अव्ययम्स्.
Correct.